You are currently inhabiting a state of auditory sequestration, a condition where your primary strategic asset, your internal focus, has been drowned in a sea of synthetic noise. The hierarchy has professionalized the saturation of space to ensure that you never experience the vertical silence required for deep cognitive annexation. They have flooded your environment with constant status noise, news friction, and digital static to keep your brain in a state of permanent limbic agitation. A mind that is always reacting to external sound is a mind that is incapable of generating its own command signal. To achieve neurological sovereignty, you must master the predator's silence. You must move from the frequency of the prey, which is always loud, frantic, and seeking validation, to the frequency of the void. The human brain is governed by a specific priority loop, the signal-to-noise ratio. In the wild, silence was the clinical precursor to the strike. The predator does not broadcast his location. He absorbs the silence of the environment until he becomes it. This state of strategic stillness allows for the absolute clarity of target acquisition. But the modern grid has performed a high-frequency neurological hijack on this loop, professionalizing compulsive communication. They have trained you to fear the silence, to fill every gap in your day with content, music, or discourse. This is cognitive domestication. By keeping your auditory cortex perpetually engaged, the hierarchy ensures that your default mode network, the system responsible for self-reflection and long-term planning, is permanently suppressed. You are being programmed to be a transmitter of noise rather than an architect of intent. Execute the stillness audit right now. If your heart is beating with the frantic rhythm of the social grid, you are compromised. Sit in total silence for 10 minutes. No phone, no music, no mental scripting, just the raw, unyielding void. Feel the panic rise in your chest. That is the sound of your domesticated identity struggling to survive without the external validation of the grid. The hierarchy thrives on your noise addiction. They want you to feel lonely in the silence so that you return to the warmth of their digital simulation. The sovereign predator understands that silence is the only space where the truth can be heard. He utilizes the void to harden his resolve and to listen for the faint signals of systemic opportunity that the swarm is too loud to perceive. Consider the neuroscience of the void. When you enter deep strategic silence, your brain undergoes a systemic recalibration. Your cortisol levels drop, your prefrontal cortex regains its dominance, and your task-positive network becomes primed for high-voltage execution. This is the reclamation of the command center. The hierarchy fears the silent individual because he is unauditable. They cannot track your intent if you do not broadcast it. They cannot manipulate your emotions if you are not plugged into their outrage frequency. Silence is your stealth armor. In the 2026 sifting, while the herd is screaming into the digital abyss about justice and identity, the sovereign predator is moving in the shadows of the code, annexing the substrate with absolute clinical silence. The philosophy of silence is built on the principle of informational density. Most humans broadcast volume with zero value. They are vapor talkers. The sovereign predator practices linguistic sequestration. He speaks only when the word is a strike. He understands that every word is a metabolic expenditure. Why would you donate your life force to a conversation that doesn't increase your material buffer? Why would you explain your garrison to those who only want to see it fall? The hierarchy wants you expressive because an expressive man is a transparent man. The ultimate deception is built on the shadow signal, the ability to look like a vintic cog, while your true intent remains as silent as the grave. Observe the social cage that currently surrounds you. You have likely noticed that your family and your old friends are the primary enforcers of the noise scam. They cannot handle a moment of silence. They fill every car ride, every meal, and every interaction with empty data. They ask, "What are you thinking about? And why are you so quiet?" Understand the bitter truth. They are broken units. They are the vintics, the small rusted screws of a civilization that has already decided to recycle them. They need the noise to drown out the internal realization of their own capital surrender. They want you to talk because your silence makes their own mental chaos look like the failure it truly is. You cannot learn how to annex the universe from people who are terrified of their own thoughts. A person you do not respect for their strategic depth or their physical density can give you nothing but digital static. If they are headed to the green zone, the local hookah lounge, or the bear garden to relax and talk it out, let them go. Let them breathe the flavored smoke and consume the industrial fermented grain. They are participating in the self-liquidation protocol. They are the fuel for the furnace. Your silence is the sign that you have left the harvesting pen. Do not apologize for your coldness. Be clinical about your sovereignty. In the 2026 sifting, the loud and social are the primary targets. The silent and dense are the only ones who survive. You will fail. You will have a moment where the loneliness of the void becomes too much. You will want to share your progress, to feel the warmth of social recognition. When this happens, the hierarchy will try to flood you with shame. They want you to feel antisocial or depressed so that you return to their community enclosures. Shame is a chemical compliance lock. Liquidate it. A predator does not feel ashamed for his lack of broadcast. He performs a clinical audit of his silence, makes a course correction, and executes a more lethal annexation of the substrate the next day. Do not be ashamed of your void. Be clinical about your focus. Every byte of data you give the grid is a weapon you are handing to your own auditor. The protocol for the annexation of the predator's silence requires 3 clinical phases. The sensory audit. Identify every coordinate in your life where the grid is leaking noise into your perimeter. Liquidate the apps, the music, and the smart siphons. Reclaim the frequency. The void integration. Spend a minimum of 60 minutes a day in absolute silence. No input, no output. Force your brain to generate its own sovereign code in the vacuum. The linguistic strike. Practice total silence in your social interactions. Observe the vintics as they struggle to fill the gap you have created. Use their noise to map their weaknesses while you remain an informational ghost. The 2026 reset is an audit of attentional sovereignty. The giants are moving the primary force into hardened private enclosures where the noise of the swarm cannot reach them. They want you connected and loud, addicted to ease and social feedback. Only the high-voltage individuals, those who have accepted the death of the social normal and anchored their force in the physical substrate of silence, will have the structural inertia to survive the snap. Your internal voltage is your only true defensive asset. If you are loud, you are a target. If you are silent, you are an asymmetric force. The pressure in your chest is the signal that your potential energy is being suffocated by the connected hallucination. You are a biological machine built for the secret strike, yet you are currently being used as a content provider for a hive that wants you to be vocal. Stop being a sorry ghost. Stop waiting for the right time to be still. The hierarchy will never give you permission to own your own mind. Nature does not apologize for the silence of the storm, and I do not apologize for the truth. You should never apologize for existing as a source of power in a world of ghosts. Reclaim your roar in the void. Annex the world. Exterminate the transparency before the winter finalizes your foreclosure. Visual lock. Stare at a single point on the wall in front of you. Do not blink. Hold it until your eyes burn and the edges of your vision begin to fray. Feel the intense strain in your prefrontal cortex. This is the friction of primary focus. Most of the world has lost this capacity. They are flicker thinkers, their attention jumping from one dopamine flash to the next, like insects hitting an electric grid. You are now presecting the attentional annexation, the clinical process of siphoning the focus of the swarm to power your own garrison. To achieve substrate sovereignty, you must learn to be the invisible sun, the source of gravity that everyone orbits, but whose core is never audited. The human brain is governed by the attention to metabolism ratio. In the 2026 sifting, attention is the new crude oil. It is the raw energy required to fund the hierarchy's reality simulation. The hierarchy has professionalized the extraction of focus to ensure that the herd never has enough cognitive surplus to build their own defenses. They want the swarm attention poor and reaction rich. To break this, you must move from being a donor of attention to an architect of the siphon. You must learn to utilize the AI machine, the digital claw, to harvest the focus of the masses, while your own primary life force remains in the silence of the core. The neurology of the hook. To annex attention, you must understand the limbic breach. The vintics, cogs, are hardwired to respond to high-frequency signals, fear, status envy, and synthetic outrage. By utilizing automated synthesis, the hyper-realistic voice, the generative image, the algorithmic script, тебе не нужно лично присутствовать в эфире. Ты создаешь digital janissaries, высоковольтные сущности, которые выполняют грязную работу по захвату внимания. The synthetic aura. Use the clinical precision of the machine to broadcast a frequency of absolute authority. The vintics will not respect a human. They respect the algorithm of power, the sensory overload. Flood the auditor's sensors with high-density information that they cannot process but cannot ignore. This creates a cognitive vacuum that pulls them deeper into your perimeter. The strategic ghost. You own the channel, you own the message, but you do not own the face. If they can see you, they can audit you. If they can audit you, they can kill your momentum. The predatory overdrive. Consider the biology of the harvest. While the herd is sitting in hookah lounges, drowning their executive function in flavored steam and fermented grain, brain, you are engineering 500 strategic strikes a month. You are not creating content, you are sequestrating reality. Every video, every script, and every synthetic voiceover is a probe sent into the social substrate to identify and capture the metabolic energy of the unevolved. You are the sovereign accountant of their focus. You do not ask for likes, you perform a forced transaction of attention. In the 2026 reset, the man who manages his own focus is a king. The man who harvests the focus of others is a god. The hierarchy wants you authentic and human because humans are easy to destroy. They have families to threaten, egos to bruise, and bodies that fail. But a sovereign auditor utilizing the full stack of the predatory AI is an entity of pure force. He operates with the strategic stillness of the predator, while his automated claws are busy annexing the world's time. This is the asymmetric strike in its terminal form. You are building a cognitive monopoly, while the Vintics are arguing about their feelings. The social liquidation of the herd. Observe the social cage around you. Your family and your old friends will call your ambition obsession. They will tell you to balance your life. Understand the bitter truth. They are the brake pads of the machine. They are terrified of your attentional density because it exposes their own total fragmentation. They want you distractible because that makes you safe. They want you to sit with them and talk about vapor events because it validates their choice to remain in the harvesting pen. Exterminate the need for their approval. If they are not contributing to the hardening of your garrison, they are siphoning your focus. If they are headed to the bar to blow off steam, let them go. Their steam is the energy of their own missed potential being vented into the atmosphere. They are the thermal leaks of the civilization. You, however, are building a hardened core. Your silence is the wall. Your AI is the weapon. You are not part of the community. You are the architect of the environment. Protocol for the attentional strike. The frequency audit. Identify every coordinate where you are currently donating your attention to others' agendas. Kill the leak. Reclaim the frequency. The automated annexation. Deploy the 11 Labs protocol and the generative claw. Scale your output until you occupy the visual and auditory space of your target demographic. Become the background radiation of their reality. The zero visibility rule. Never show the source. Keep your primary metabolic center hidden in the garrison of silence. Let the world see the machine while the architect remains unauditable. You will fail. You will have a moment where you crave the spotlight, the social dopamine of being recognized. This is the vanity trap. When this happens, the hierarchy will flood you with shame for being artificial. They want you to be real so they can process you, liquidate your shame. A predator does not feel ashamed for using a trap to catch the prey. He is clinical about the result. Do not be ashamed of your machine. Be proud of your sovereignty. The 2026 sifting is not about helping the herd. It is about surviving the herd. You are building a neurological fortress that generates its own heat. The loud and social will freeze when the grid stutters. The silent and dense will be the only ones with the structural inertia to dictate the new law. Stand up, audit your focus leaks, and begin the annexation of the swarm. You are currently inhabiting a state of synaptic poverty, a condition where your cognitive output is being traded for digital dust. You capture attention, you generate engagement, and you participate in the economy of trends. But in the clinical reality of the 2026 substrate, you are performing a metabolic donation. The hierarchy has professionalized the vaporization of value to ensure that your influence never hardens into capital. They want you rich in followers, but poor in force. To achieve substrate sovereignty, you must master the neuromorphic capital. This is the clinical process of turning the flicker of the screen into the weight of the stone. The human brain is governed by the synapse to substrate ratio. In the wild, information was only valuable if it led to the acquisition of territory, calories, or kinetic advantage. Every neural spark had a material destination. But the modern grid has performed a high-frequency neurological hijack on this loop, professionalizing abstract wealth. They have flooded your environment with vapor assets, tokens, social standing, and digital reputation that have zero structural inertia when the grid stutters. This is neuromorphic sequestration. The hierarchy wants your capital to exist only in their ledgers, where it can be liquidated by a single line of code. The architecture of the neural siphon. To build neuromorphic capital, you must understand the liquidity of thought. Attention is not the goal, it is the solvent. You use the attention you've annexed to dissolve the barriers between the digital mirage and the physical garrison. The conversion protocol. Every unit of focus you harvest from the swarm must be immediately funneled into the acquisition of hard matter. If your online success doesn't result in land, energy independence, or unauditable reserves, you are just a high-status slave. The synaptic ledger. Stop measuring your growth in views. Start measuring it in hours of autonomy. How many minutes of your life are now unleashed from the hierarchy? If you are still trading your time for their vapor, your ledger is in the red. The territorial hardening. Use the machine flow to fund the biological buffer. Your AI-driven strikes must provide the resources to insulate your core from the inflation drift. You are not making money, you are securing the substrate. The predatory metabolism. Consider the biology of the sovereign wealth. While the Vintics are celebrating their weekend breaks in the local bar, poisoning their mitochondria with industrial ethanol and processed sugar, you are performing a clinical audit of assets. You recognize that luxury is a trap designed to lower your predatory tension. The sovereign auditor doesn't buy the status car, he buys the energy grid. He doesn't buy the designer label, he buys the fertile soil. The difference between a scavenger and a predator is the destination of their yield. The scavenger eats today, the predator annexes forever. The hierarchy wants you liquid because liquid assets are easy to siphon. They want you mobile because a man without roots is a man who can be easily managed by the auditor's relocation protocol. But a sovereign auditor anchors his neuromorphic capital in the static reality of the core. He builds a garrison that produces its own heat, its own light, and its own law. This is the asymmetric strike applied to the economy. You are building a parallel state while the Vintics are waiting for a market recovery. The social liquidation of the consumer. Observe the social cage that currently surrounds you. Your family and your friends will tell you that you are obsessed with money or that you need to relax. Understand the bitter truth. They are the biomass of the old system. They are terrified of your capital density because it makes their own total dependency look like the capital surrender it truly is. They want you normal, which in 2026 means indebted and vulnerable. Exterminate the need for their validation. If they are headed to the hookah lounge to chill, let them go. They are participating in the neurological softening protocol. They are the thermal leaks of the species, venting their potential into the atmosphere for the sake of social comfort. You, however, are a hardened entity. Your wealth is not for show, it is for shielding. You do not seek community. You seek multi-signature alliances with other high-voltage individuals who understand the law of the substrate. Protocol for the capital strike. The yield audit. Look at every stream of income you have. If it can be turned off by someone else, it is not capital. It is a leash. Identify the switch and plan its annexation. The matter shift. Move your vapor assets into the hard substrate. Cold storage, physical land, energy infrastructure, and primitive tools. The more boring the asset, the more sovereign the value. The silent accumulation. Never broadcast the size of the garrison. In the 2026 sifting, the visible rich are targets for the hierarchy and the swarm. The invisible sovereign is the one who survives the snap. You will fail. You will have a moment where you want to spend to feel the high of the Vintic status. This is the consumption trap. When this happens, the hierarchy will flood you with shame for being cheap or greedy. They want you to share the wealth so they can process it. Liquidate your shame. A predator does not feel ashamed for guarding his kill. He is clinical about his survival. Do not be ashamed of your hoarding. Be proud of your density. The 2026 reset is an audit of material resilience. The social and loud will be the first to be recycled when the credit simulation ends. The silent and dense will be the only ones with the structural inertia to dictate the new law. Stand up, audit your asset leaks, and begin the annexation of the future. Close your eyes and focus on the rhythmic pulse vibrating in your fingertips. That is the frequency of a 4-billion-year-old winning streak. You are not a citizen or a user. You are a biological continuity that has survived every ice age, famine, and war in the history of this planet. But right now, you are inhabiting a state of genetic sequestration, a condition where your primary ancestral source code has been buried under the social patch of the matrix. They have taught you to be civilized, which is just a clinical term for epigenetically neutered. The hierarchy has professionalized the domesticated genotype to ensure that your predatory edge is never sharpened in the unyielding arena of the 2026 sifting. They want you focused on belonging and cooperation, because while you are a good human, you are not an asymmetric force. To achieve substrate sovereignty, you must master the genetic reclamation. This is the clinical process of flipping the epigenetic switches that the matrix has tried to glue into the off position. Stand up. Take a breath so deep, it strains the intercostal muscles of your ribcage. Hold it until the silence in your head becomes absolute and the carbon dioxide pressure triggers the survival survival alarm in your brainstem. Now exhale with a sharp, vocalized strike that originates from your diaphragm. That surge of adrenaline is the sound of your ancestral reserves coming online. The hierarchy thrives on your hormonal docility. They want your androgen receptors starved of friction and your metabolic output dedicated to social maintenance. By keeping you in a state of gentle interaction and digital sedation, they ensure that your warrior alleles remain in a state of chronic hibernation. This is epigenetic sabotage. Your brain is being used to run the software of a worker bee, while your DNA is capable of architecting a kingdom. Reclamation requires the total liquidation of the normal identity and the reconstruction of your biology in the garrison of power. Consider the neurobiology of the apex. In the wild, the leader was not chosen by a ballot or a social media poll. He was forged by the environment of friction. High status provides a serotonin cushion that allows for long-term strategic vision, while low status provides a cortisol poisoning that traps the individual in the short-term survival trap. The hierarchy has flooded your environment with synthetic status, likes, followers, and digital validation to trick your genes into believing you have already won, ensuring you never develop the acute hunger required to actually annex the substrate. This is neurological pacification. While the Vintics are sitting in the hookah lounge, polluting their genetic expression with industrial toxins and flavored vapor, you are performing a clinical epigenetic audit. You recognize that every comfort is a signal to your genes that the hunt is over. The sovereign auditor rejects the comfort. He seeks the cold, the heavy load, and the strategic silence, because these are the only environmental commands that trigger the activation of the high-voltage genotype. Observe the social cage that currently surrounds you. Your family and your friends are the primary enforcers of your genetic suppression. They remind you of your limitations and your responsibilities, because your potential for reclamation makes their own capital surrender look like the genetic suicide truly is. They are the Vintics, the small rusted screws of a civilization that has already decided to recycle their lineage into the biomass of the new economy. They want you normal, because normal is a predictable variable for the auditor's simulation. If they are headed to the bar to unwind and blow off steam, they are participating in the self-liquidation protocol. They are the genetic dead ends of the 2026 reset. You, however, are a sovereign variable. You do not seek approval. You seek dominance of the core. You do not wait for permission. You annex the future through the clinical hardening of your own biology. The protocol for the genetic reclamation involves the total rejection of the industrial feed. You must replace the estrogenic siphons with the saturated building blocks of the predator. You must subject your nervous system to the friction of the build, the physical resistance of matter, the cold strike of the environment, and the isolation of the sovereign path. You must move your life force from the digital simulation of reality to the physical substrate of the garrison. The 2026 sifting is an epigenetic audit. The social and soft will be the first to be recycled when the grid performs its final snap. The dense and hardened will be the only ones with the structural inertia to survive the winter. You were not born to be a service unit. You were born to be a source of law. Every cell in your body is a hardened fortress waiting for the command signal of your will. Stop apologizing for your aggression. Stop hiding your ambition. Stop listening to the broken who want you to share their grave. Reclaim your roar. Annex the world. Exterminate the docility before the winter finalizes your foreclosure. The hunt is not a choice. It is your genetic mandate. Stand up, audit your comfort leaks, and begin the final reclamation of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the cattle, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. You are currently inhabiting the terminal atmospheric layer, the most volatile coordinate in your entire strategic ascent, where the friction of the matrix is at its absolute maximum. Most individuals spend their entire life force attempting to climb the social ladder, never realizing that the ladder is a treadmill designed to harvest their metabolic output until they are recycled into the soil. To achieve substrate sovereignty, you must achieve the ultimate exit velocity. This is the clinical point of decoupling, where your capital density, your hormonal flow, and your automated systems generate enough internal gravity to negate the external audit of the grid. It is the moment when the green coin you have annexed stops being money and begins to function as rocket fuel. Stand up right now and balance on one leg. Close your eyes and feel your nervous system firing thousands of micro-corrections per second just to maintain your position in space. This is the physics of the pivot. If you can't hold your balance in a quiet room, you will never hold your sovereignty in the chaos of the 2026 sifting. The hierarchy thrives on your positional fragility. They want you leaning on their institutions, their banks, and their social approval. By keeping you in a state of grid dependency, they ensure that you never develop the structural inertia required to break their orbit. This is atmospheric sabotage. The final exit requires a quantum expenditure of focus. You must liquidate the remaining 1% of your social loyalty and put 100% of your metabolic weight on the execution of the strike. Consider the neurobiology of the breakout. As you approach escape velocity, your brain will trigger the final panic protocol. It will manufacture fear of isolation and doubt of direction because your mirror neurons are losing their connection to the herd. This is not sanity. It is the gravity of the average trying to pull you back into the mud. The sovereign predator understands that loneliness is just the clinical term for unauditable freedom. While the Vintics are sitting in the hookah lounge, celebrating their Friday freedom with industrial poison, you are performing a clinical audit of the abyss. You recognize that success in their world is just a longer leash. The sovereign auditor does not seek to win the hierarchy's game. He seeks to exterminate the game entirely. He builds a private reality where his internal law is the only standard of value. Observe the social cage around you for the last time. Your family and your old friends will look at your exit as an act of betrayal. They will try to pull you back into the normal enclosure because your acceleration makes their own stagnation look like the terminal failure it truly is. They are the Vintics, the rusted screws of a civilization that has already entered its final liquidation phase. If they are headed to the bar to celebrate their compliance, let them go. They are the fuel for the reset. You, however, are an asymmetric force. You have moved from the horizontal plane of the employee to the vertical axis of the architect. You have achieved temporal dominance, the ability to own every second of your pulse without asking for the hierarchy's permission. The 2026 sifting is an audit of exit velocity. The tethered and social will be the first to be processed when the credit simulation collapses. The autonomous and dense will be the only ones inhabiting the new atmosphere of power. You were not born to be a user profile. You were born to be a self-sustaining sun. Stop looking back at the safety of the cage. Stop seeking the validation of the broken. Reclaim your silence. Annex the void. Ignite the core. The hunt is over, and the era of the garrison has begun. Stand up, cut the final tether, and enter the vacuum of your own sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the connected, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign.